project that's starting in the home, or maybe you want to make a decision about moving or about your family. And this can happen in so many different ways. It can be in subtle ways, it can be in big ways, and it could happen in the form of an idea. We start thinking, I'd really love to start on this project. And maybe you're not going to start it right at the new moon, but at the new moon is when the idea lands. So you don't need to know your chart in order to listen inwardly and just connect with what's happening in your life right now, because I'm going to talk about this from sort of a deeper, mystical, but also very psychological standpoint. So as I mentioned, new moons initiate 2.5-year cycles. And of course, this new moon is at that 28 degree. And if you've listened to the past podcasts, what I've talked about is that every new moon from September of 2025 to March of 2026 is at 28 degrees. And so what this indicates to us is that there is something happening around that degree point. So if you have planets or points around 27, 28, 29 degrees, you may be feeling this more specifically. All right, so Sagittarius is this archetype that points us to truth, to freedom, to expansion. Sagittarius is intellectual. It's the professor, the sage. It's inspiring. It's hopeful. It can also be sort of serious and very contemplative. Sagittarius is this archetype that's seeking truth, but can often be very focused on right and wrong. Now, Sagittarius is a highly dualistic energy, and that means that it operates out of extremes. So we can all relate to extremes, right? We've all been in extremes. You can be extremely nice. You can be extremely controlling. You can be extremely giving. You can be extremely people-pleasing. You can be extremely agitated. Maybe some people are extremely religious. Some people are extremely political. Some are extremely intelligent. Some are extremely wild, right? Extremes are things that we tend to judge and be in judgment of. But actually, extremes are very important, and because extremes are how we learn. We don't actually understand something fully unless we've gone into the extreme of that. And that's why you see, a professional athlete has gone to the extreme of their body. And that's why they've become really good at whatever they're doing. So extremes have, sort of a benefit to them. And of course, they also have detriments. Now, Sagittarius as an archetype tends to be this either very extremely dogmatic and religious, maybe very extremely moral, extremely politically correct, maybe very focused on justice, oriented towards one truth, one way. Or Sagittarius can be the very opposite. It can be very open, very free-spirited. It can be sort of wishy-washy, indecisive, having no clear way or truth. So that's one extreme. Those are two extremes of Sagittarius. And another extreme of Sagittarius is that it can be very serious, very meaningful, very dedicated, like a professor. It can be very focused on having this one purpose. And on the other side, Sagittarius can be very different, very fun, funny, very lighthearted, sort of life of the party, very focused on joy, excitement, adventure. Everything's about newness. So as you can see, Sagittarius has many, many different ways of showing up. And very often, the Sagittarius energy tends to be stuck in an extreme. And what happens whenever we get stuck in an extreme is that we end up feeling dissatisfied. And I know a lot about extremist energy, okay? My south node is in Sagittarius, and I have 3 planets, including my strongest planet, which is Jupiter, the ruler of Sag, in Sagittarius. So this is a familiar energy to me. I know a lot about living that wild, lighthearted, sort of super fun, super giving, sort of super escapist energy of Sag. And I also have lived the very serious, very right and wrong, very extremist, more religious side of Sag. And through those extremes, I personally learned so much about the underlying energy and motives and the instincts and the struggles of my life and the life of every person. And this is because Sag can take us into a very big perspective. It expands our capacity to have understanding. And I believe what the highest expression of Sagittarius is to actually hold the understanding of what it means for a person to go into extremes and to know that it's safe for people to go into extremes. Because this is how we learn about ourselves. We only can know the truth of our wild nature if we're willing to go into it. We can only know about our dogmatic nature because we've experienced it. And to really fully allow yourself to see those versions of you is where you're ultimately going to find true freedom. So everyone has had to work through energies and struggles and challenges. And very often we tend to think that ours are very personal and unique to us. But what Sagittarius reminds us is that life struggles, life challenges are not inherently personal, they are archetypal. And that means that all humans have similar struggles, longings, similar desires, and we all actually have similar purposes. And at the same time, we have our unique personal lives. And so, to be true to Sagittarius nature, these similarities unite us and give us understanding of those who are different from us, but they also allow us to be completely and vastly different and allow us to be on our own unique paths in life. And that is really important, to be able to have this duality of seeing connection and difference and knowing that it's safe to have both. So Sag is a fire energy. It's mutable energy. It's dynamic. This archetype is excited. It's wanting to go everywhere, know everything, learn everything. It's very curious energy. And as I mentioned, it can also be very obsessive or extremist, where we want to know everything about something or someone. And Sagittarius comes after Scorpio energy. So it is this sort of reminder to the soul that after we've plunged into the darker depths of life, of our spirit, of our soul, of difficulty, Sagittarius reminds us that we need to return to hope. That we need to return to our soul, to faith, to seeing the bigger perspective. Because with Scorpio energy, we can go down into the darkness. We can see the struggles of life. And Sagittarius says, yes, and there is more than that. Sagittarius reminds us to get out of that small worldview and to get out of thinking everything is a personal attack on us, and to see that life is bigger and that we don't need truth to be the whole world's truth. That two things can be true at the same time and exist and be very, very different. So Sag asks us to return to this reverence for life and for the universe and for diversity and for the ability to love what is here now. Now, one of the shadows of Sagittarius energy is this desire to enforce. And there's this need sort of with Sag energy to enforce worldviews, enforce ideals onto others. If we think something is right and true and good, we end up having this very idealistic energy, and then we think other people should think that that is what is true and good also. And this is the sort of survival energy of Sagittarius, this shadowy need to establish one way, one right way. And if we can just all do life in this one right way and abide by the rules, then everything will be good. Right? That is a very shadow energy of Sagittarius. And this is where Sag can be very political or very religious energy. And often politicians or religious people have very strong Sagittarius aspects in their chart. And the intention is that there's a desire to create an idealistic world. That if we all do that right thing, if we all follow the rules, we'll all be safe. And again, as I mentioned, that's the shadow. And the shadow is based on fear of surviving. But when we think about the higher expression, or the way I like to term it is the free expression of Sagittarius, is learning to understand and hold within our body that there does not need to be one right way. There is not one right system. There's not one moral code that we can enforce that will cause freedom in the world. There is not one right way that will cause safety. Rules and regulations that are enforced upon others is actually projection, meaning that we are not abiding by the rules and regulations we think we should abide upon in our own lives, so we want to enforce that outward. If you took all the energy, if we as humans took all the energy that we use to try to enforce rules, codes, morality, and regulations onto other people, and we instead directed all that energy inward, and we took that energy to heal our own triggers, if we took that energy and we began to abide by our own moral codes, if we could use that energy to stop complaining, blaming, or pointing the finger, if we learned how to heal, if we took all that energy we were projecting and enforcing onto others and instead learned how to have compassion, and we learned how to let people be different, then we would actually create the world we want to live in. Instead of insisting other people live it, we would begin to live the life we think is moral. And it's a great illusion to think that we can enforce other people to do things that we can't do. And this is really what we see in a lot of religious cultures. Pastors and preachers and guides and gurus and sages are all saying the right thing, and then secretly they're living some other life. I can't tell you how many of these types of people I've talked to that have so many hidden secrets, shames, and fears because they're saying and they're projecting the right thing outwardly, but that means all the energy is getting projected outward, and they then therefore do not have the energy to create that from within. So Sagittarius invites us to learn how to use all that energy to become. That means we become the world we want to live in. That means we stop projecting and trying to enforce everyone else live in the world, and we create that world. People who are in inner chaos are often the ones that are trying to inflict rules and regulations, right and wrong, good and bad, and judgment onto others. And again, this isn't wrong. This keeps people stuck. This keeps you stuck. This keeps me stuck. So Sagittarius energy invites us to release that forcing onto others and to use all that energy to create the life that's fulfilling to us. So during this new moon, we want to anchor inward. Sagittarius is an archetype that connects us to faith and hope. So we want to think about how we can embody the things we think we believe. And this is exactly what my signature offering, Somatic Release and Neural Reprogramming, is about. How to get you out of your head and into your body. All the things you think you know, to bring them into lived experience. We have a tendency to look externally. We look to other people to try to affirm what we think is true. And every time we do this, we build our life on sand. When we look to other people's beliefs or what other people have said, when we look to, podcasts and books to try to find hope or faith, our life is going to eventually crumble. And that is because that external affirmation has no foundation and no root. So Sagittarius is an energy where it is about every person's life path is to become the sage for yourself. To figure out what you're going to believe, not based on a podcast or a book or what someone else said, but what are you going to believe based on deep consideration? If X is true, then Y is true, then this means, X, Y, and Z. So if life is about being my most authentic self, then I need to focus on what does my most authentic self love to do? And can my most authentic self be okay if other people don't like this version of me? And if people aren't happy with me, what does it mean if that bothers me? Oh, what it means is I'm giving my power to these people. And why would I give my power to them? What is my motive? This is Sagittarius energy. It's the archetype of sitting and thinking and considering yourself. Now, the shadow of this is, why do they do this? Why are they doing that? I can't understand why they would do X, Y, and Z. Yes, you can't understand it because you can't understand yourself. When we understand ourselves, we understand other people. When we understand our motives, and this is hard to do, this is extremely challenging. As humans, we live most of our life from a projected state. And Sagittarius is that archetype that says, come within. Go look without and then take all that and look within. What does it mean that I'm giving my power to other people by wanting them to like me? What's my motive? Try to understand that, right? That's Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius invites us to connect with humility. The humility to say, oh, I'm saying all the right things, but I'm not able to embody them. So what am I missing? The shadow energy of projection is where we don't want to take ownership. And this is because we are afraid to see our motivations and we're afraid to be vulnerable. And this is not wrong, this is not bad, but this is what keeps us stuck. And so this new moon is an opportunity to get unstuck. Our faith, our beliefs, our worldview may be being tested around this new moon. And the test is to see, are we ready to learn? Are we ready to humble ourselves? Are we ready to evolve? Stuckness is hardness. It's resistance. It's that inability to soften and say, oh, wow, yeah, I thought I healed this, but actually I am still really attached to this person or to this experience, and I'm still really giving my power away to it. And to not judge that as wrong or bad, but to say, oh, why am I still doing that? Let me sit with this. Let me be with this part of me that is still wrapped up in this past experience. Our energy, our stories our entire field can be wrapped up in something that happened 20 years ago, and we can be completely unconscious of that. And again, that's not wrong or bad. It's from lack of contemplation. And that's the gift of Sagitt energy, is coming inward, contemplating, allowing ourselves to see. You know, Sagittarius is about this ability to be flexible, to allow ourselves to be different, to change, and to allow other people to be different. And at the same time, we're needing to claim our own truth. And in the claiming of our own truth, we don't need to diminish others. Because if we do, that's what's giving our power away. That's projection. So an example of this might be if you have an addiction to alcohol or shopping or scrolling or any kind of little escapist addiction energy, and we do not like to identify as the addict, but everyone has had some kind of an addiction in their life, maybe addiction to control, but an addiction nonetheless. If you've had an addiction, we'll just use alcohol. You may need to anchor into a belief that alcohol is toxic. And maybe you need to anchor into the belief that it's toxic because you need to free yourself from that addiction. And so you have to go into an extreme. And what your tendency is going to do is to think it's toxic for everyone and no one should have it. But Sag teaches us that we don't have to force that belief on others, but that we need to understand that in order for us to separate from that energy, maybe of this addiction to alcohol, that we might have to separate from people who are drinking. Or if it's shopping, we need to separate from people who are shopaholics. Okay? And to realize that it's not serving you and your life at this time, but that you don't need those other people to be wrong or bad or evil because they're engaging with it. And that is something that's really hard for us to do as humans, because we think if something is right or wrong, we think it's right or wrong, on a universal level, and that's not true. So Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in retrograde in Cancer during this new moon, and Jupiter's making some important aspects. So this new moon could be bringing up something quite important about our home, our family, these deep belief systems that are in our bodies, emotional pain from our childhood, emotional struggles around family or lineage. And we also have this square during this new moon with Neptune and Saturn in Pisces. So this is where there is a big challenge being brought up about dissolving something out of our lives. This could be dissolving an addiction. This could be dissolving a habit. This could be dissolving an illusion. This could also be dissolving a belief system. And the point of the dissolving around this new moon is to also create a new whatever we're dissolving. So probably a belief system around whatever we're needing to dissolve out of our lives. And there's inherently a struggle here because there's a square. Struggles aren't hard, they're tension points. We have to make a decision. We have to say what we're ready to do. And it's going to be different than what we've done before. So maybe there's a truth that you're holding onto that is no longer freeing you. Maybe there is a truth that you've been really stuck in about being right and being good, and this is the time to release that stuckness. Maybe you're actually needing to anchor into seeing through an illusion. Okay, there's no right or wrong way, and everyone's going to have very individual experiences, and this is why it's helpful to work with someone one-to-one to really get clarity about what is happening for you right now. But this new moon is also sandwiched between Venus and Mars. And Venus and Mars are going to be very significant in the in the beginning part of 2026. So as we move into 2026, the first couple weeks of January, these two planets are pretty big, impactful energies. So there's a lot of momentum with Mars and Capricorn, speaking to our energy, our ability to move something forward. And Venus in Sagittarius is connected to, well, they're all conjunct the new moon, but they're also conjunct Juno, Hecate, and the galactic center. So there's a lot of complexity around relationships and commitments, and there may be some kind of crossroad that you're getting ready to face around this new moon, a big choice point. And it feels like it's a very soulful, something related to something you've been moving through over the past year or maybe 2.5 years. And the soul is asking you to tune in to, like, what is meaningful? What really is love? What do you really love about this person or about this commitment? And what is an illusion? What are you committing to? What are you really committing to? So often we think we know the answers, and when we're actually confronted to ask the deeper questions, we realize we don't really know. And so there's a deep karmic pattern here. And karmic patterns are inviting us to do a couple things. Number one, we could be saying yes to something that's about to totally change our lives. Sometimes karmic patterns are going to take us into something that is so important, and it may be an extreme, but we're going to learn something really deep from that experience. Number two, it could be that we're going to cut the cord to an old attachment. We're ready to detach, and we're ready to clear a karmic pattern. We've gone through the ebbs and flows of it. We went into the extreme, and now we're ready to cut that energy off. Or it could be that we're getting ready to jump back into a fire that we've been in before, because we need to really fully understand that pattern or illusion one more time. And there is no wrong way to deal with a karmic pattern. All of the patterns are here to teach us to heal, and the only way to heal is to go into the pattern. So wherever you are, fully witness and experience what is happening, and see, can you look deeper? What is the deeper truth? You might not be able to see it right away. That's okay. It's the exploration. It's the willingness to look within. It's the willingness to look at your attachment. So there's just really big soul lessons here. And I can be completely honest with you from personal experience, there's no wrong way to do it. Sometimes we just need to go back, and we need to get burned, and we need to go into the fire, and that's okay. Now, Mercury is square the nodes, so the details of what are happening at this time are very important. So pay a lot of attention to the way communication is coming to you, the way you are communicating. There's probably going to be a lot of changing your mind over the next 2.5 years. As I mentioned, Jupiter rules this lunation, and Jupiter is retrograde in Cancer, and Jupiter's making a square to Chiron. So there is a very important invitation here to set some intentions around healing really big fears and wounds around this root chakra energy, around safety and security and your ability to actually fulfill your own dreams. And Jupiter is this planet that connects us with the ability to follow and live out our dreams. And with Jupiter's placement in Cancer, we can see that in order to follow our dreams, we're going to have to heal some deeper parts of our own soul. This means the beliefs that we're holding in our body. Jupiter's a storyteller. So this is about what are the stories, the beliefs, the experiences you're holding in your body, especially around our families. And with Jupiter in Cancer, making that square to Chiron, there's grief to be healed here. Some people are going to be in really extreme challenges. Some people are going to be really stepping into expansion. But over these next 2.5 years, what are the dynamics that you're ready to heal? So many people think that they have healed. We think we know it all. We've healed it all. We have all the answers. And with podcasts and chat, you do have all the answers, but knowing the answers intellectually does not mean that you know them in your body. And intellectual knowledge is a great, great illusion. I've said it before, I'll say it many times. You can know if you're embodied and that you are in your wisdom if you are not triggered by people. If you're not defensive and hurt and misunderstood and angry and anxious. Those things aren't wrong or bad, but they are where we are not embodied. So many people are talking about how they're transcending to 5D, and yet they are not even okay to be in 3D consciousness. So when people say that, they're living in an illusion. Because to be in higher consciousness is to not be triggered, is to not need to judge, is to not need to blame. Higher consciousness will never point fingers at others. Higher consciousness will not label other people as good or bad or right or wrong. So if someone's actually in higher consciousness, they're not triggered by lower consciousness. Somebody in higher consciousness never will judge a person in lower consciousness. I see all the time all these memes about, I'm not available for lower frequencies. Well, that isn't wrong or bad, but that is you separating. That is you creating an illusion in yourself that you don't have the lower frequencies, because higher consciousness knows you contain all the frequencies. You're never not all the frequencies. Like, to be in this world is to be everything that is. So higher consciousness is about acceptance, not about separation. And Jupiter and Sag are this invitation to bring ourselves into that higher field of possibility, awareness, beingness. This means holding higher consciousness, understanding everything. Everyone has its place, and you don't have to agree. You don't have to fix or change the external world, because when we expand our consciousness, we see that we are not divided. We are always connected to everything. And from this higher state, higher being, we can rest. Okay? This is where we connect with God, with nature, with spirit. That there is a perfect order in perfect disorder. That life is death and rebirth. And Sag reminds us to tap into that electrical energy of the heart. And our heart is not about right and wrong. Our heart is about desire, connection to inspiration, love, fulfillment. Our heart has this incredible capacity to contain like 5,000 times more electrical charge than our brain. So when we anchor into our heart, we anchor into what we love, into this passion for life, for the whole. It's not about another person. It's not about projecting outward. No, God, universe, spirit is within. And we want to look inward. That's what Sagittarius invites us to do. Come inward, find that soul, that source from within. And for some people, when we do this, this is going to be about being in nature. That's what we love. That's what we're passionate about. For some people, they're going to find when they go inward that they want to create a business that's about health because they love health and the body and making the body feel alive. And for some people, they're going to focus on design and beauty and curating beautiful spaces because this is what lights them up. Okay, for other people, what they love is going to be art and creating. And for someone else, it might be making food and being nourished and creating nourishment in the world. So as we tune into our heart, we connect with what's meaningful to us. And what's meaningful to us right now might not be what's meaningful forever, but for right now. And then we can anchor into that purpose and begin to live that purpose out for ourselves. So we want to be very careful not to make our meaning about a person. Because when we do that, we put a lot of pressure on the person, and a lot of people are doing that with relationships, and it's keeping them stuck and stagnant. It's not wrong, it's not bad, and they can keep on doing it, but it is keeping them from finding that soul connection. Every time we, project meaning outward, we lose connection to our soul. And soul is where God resides, where the Creator resides. And other people are reflections, but we lose individual connection to source when we externalize. The connection to the Creator living within you is what your soul longs for. And I know this is actually really difficult for us to connect to as humans. That's why we're always on the external. We're always looking outward. But this is what Sagittarius energy is about, is remembering highest consciousness lives in source. And source is within everyone. There is no separation with source. There is no right or wrong or good or bad. No one is separated from source. And our whole life is honestly connected with trying to connect to source in this journey. And I know that this is a challenge. I know because we are constantly looking outward, and we are looking for the answer outward, and there's nothing wrong with the outward, but it's not where the answers are. And I want to acknowledge that when we're in survival energy, connecting to this soul inspiration, to our spirit, to the Creator, to source, to spirit, this is a challenge. Because when we're trying to just survive, all we can tend to think about is, I don't want to live this anymore. And it can feel very hard and very difficult. So if you are in a place of despair, or you're feeling like you just don't know how to connect, you don't know what to do, please know that that's okay. And that Sagittarius energy invites us to align into our imagination. Because no matter how much struggle we're in, we can use our mind. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to go into a fantasy, a disengaged sense of reality. We don't want to create this, we're going from being in a struggle to being this glorious millionaire. That's an illusion. What we want to imagine is creating a life where we can wake up and feel amazing, where we want to live, where we're connected to our soul, where we're connected to source, where we want to cook and eat and rest and create and move through the world with ease. And that still can feel hard, but it's more real. That's actually what it takes to be a human, is to just do the most basic things. To just be able to get up and make our bed and cook food and eat and create. So we might not be able to imagine creating this life where we're traveling the whole world, but we can imagine creating a life where we live from peace. So hold a vision for yourself. What is it that you want to create in your life? Maybe you are in a place where you're ready to expand to a greater level, but maybe you're not. And that's okay. Wherever you are, be where you are. And this is one of the reasons, social media can be such a huge distraction. and can really keep us in a state of being scattered and uncertain. Because we see what other people are doing. When the soul is always saying, no, come back, just see where you are right now. And what is the next right step? Not what is 10 steps ahead. We're living in today. We need to live in today. Okay, so here are some questions you might play with, contemplate under the new moon. What is my highest dream? What is the fulfillment and hope that I want for my life? What feels meaningful and purposeful? What belief structure do I think other people should hold, but I know I need to let go of? What beliefs are ready to be dissolved? If I heal these wounds and fill in the blank to whatever these wounds are, how might I expand in the next 2.5 years? And what wisdom am I ready to bring into my body? Okay, I'll put the questions in the description, and it is my hope that any or all of this that was shared will spark some sort of aligned, in tuned, and intelligent contemplation for you, and inspire your heart, spark your heart to dig deep within and to connect to source, to connect to your soul. And if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, you can reach me at kismetmystic.com. But I'm sending you so much love as you navigate this new moon and set intentions for yourself and really think about what it is that you want to create with your life.